It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier. In the all-new Frontier, the adventure begins where the road ends, so get out there and find your Frontier. The all-new Frontier has 310 horsepower standard for when the trail gets tough. Shop NissanUSA.com today to see more features the Frontier is loaded with, from premium interior and a 9-inch touchscreen and zero-gravity front seats. Find your Frontier today in the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier. Shop NissanUSA.com.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12s. This is Corbin Smith, your host for Locked On Seahawks. Joining me for our Blue Friday episode, my co-host Nick Lee. The Seahawks preparing for their NFC West opener, heading to Santa Clara to face the 49ers. Always an exciting matchup when these two bitter rivals get together. And this will be the first of two matchups they have every single year. The Seahawks have dominated this series, but as we know, it's been kind of a rough start for Seattle. San Francisco, they're 2-1, nearly became 3-0 last week, if not for the heroics of Aaron Rodgers. So this is certainly a talented, well-coached football team. We broke down the matchups on Wednesday. Now we're going to be diving into the keys to victory for the Seahawks and, of course, our picks to click. So let's get rolling. Today's episode is brought your way by Run Your Pool. Check them out today and get $10 off at runyourpool.com/lockedon. or use the promo code Locked On at checkout. Now for your lead story here on Locked On Seahawks. We are now 2 days away from kickoff at Levi's Stadium, and the Seahawks and 49ers are both dealing with some significant injuries. On San Francisco's side, tight end George Kittle is listed as questionable. From everything I'm reading, he is truly a game-time decision for the 49ers, and if he doesn't play, that is going to be a huge loss for their offense. In my opinion, the best tight end overall in the NFL. Not having him out there really limits the options for Jimmy Garoppolo, but the Seahawks have some of their own injuries to deal with. And in my opinion, and maybe you disagree, but I feel like the news coming out today, for the most part, has not been positive for the Seahawks, though it does sound like Tyler Lockett, after practicing today, sounds like there's a very good chance that he's going to be playing. Yesterday, I didn't necessarily feel that way with him being out with a hip injury. Otherwise, though, not a lot of good news for the Seahawks going into this game.
No, I mean, anytime you're down a starting tackle, that's not a good sign, especially when you're playing a team that has some guy named Nick Bosa. That's not usually a good sign at all. Brandon Shell, of course, is what who I'm referring to, is out, and Rashad Penny is ruled out as well. It seems like he's still just behind, and I'm trying to avoid the CJ Prosise comparisons, but it's getting to that point for him, unfortunately. And the good news is absolutely Tyler Lockett, yeah. And another receiver who unfortunately was trending in a good direction towards the end of the week, or in the middle of the week, but then seems to – I think Pete Carroll says it's going to be tough for D. Eskridge to make it into the game on Sunday. And I just really want to see D. Eskridge at full capacity, because he's shown flashes of being one of the faster receivers, not just on the Seahawks, but in the NFL. I mean, he just has that kind of top level speed, and you hate to just not have that, especially against a team that'll probably try to do the same exact thing on offense against the Seahawks and the Niners. They like to use speed and getting guys out in space. You'd love to at least counter a little bit with a guy like D. Eskridge, who I think is a very 49ers-y, Shanahan-y kind of player. So I think for me, the two biggest bummers are Brandon Shell being out, and Dwayne Eskridge is doubtful.
Yeah, Eskridge not being able to play in this game really stinks, because he just got cleared from concussion protocol on Wednesday. He was limited on Thursday and apparently did not practice at all on Friday. And based on what Pete Carroll said, it sounds to me like it's one of those situations where they're just really trying to be cautious, easing him back in after a head injury. And with the way things are now with concussions, I completely understand it. And maybe that means that they could have him Thursday against the Rams, but it's not looking good for him to play in this game. And we have to mention Gerald Everett. That's the storyline we didn't expect this week. becoming the first Seahawk player in the last year and a half to test positive for COVID-19. And what Carroll said today is he's asymptomatic, which is great news. That's always the first thing you want to know is the player having symptoms. He's vaccinated. He's asymptomatic. But unfortunately, he has not been able to have a negative test yet. A vaccinated player can come back in quick order and get kicked out of that 10-day isolation period if they have 2 negative tests in a 48-hour window. But now the Seahawks are up against the deadline here. If somehow he has a negative test today or early tomorrow morning, I don't know how all that works as far as timing goes, but Pete Carroll didn't rule out there was still a possibility he could play in this game. I think it's really doubtful, though, that Gerald Everett is going to be able to play just because he has not had a first negative test yet. So that's a really big blow. I guess if you want good news on the flip side, though, Pete Carroll said that he expects Colby Parkinson is going to make his 2021 debut in this game on Sunday against the 49ers. He returned to practice this week. He needs to be activated to the 53-man roster, and as of this recording, that has not yet happened. But Carroll made it sound like that was a foregone conclusion, that he was going to be put on the roster, and they do have a spot with Gerald Everett being on the reserve COVID list, so they can activate him. They also may activate Cedric Ogbuehi, which would be a big deal at right tackle. They started Jamarco Jones there last week. Jake Kieran got his first regular season snaps at right tackle as well, but Ogbuehi played really well the last 3 games of the 2020 season, replacing Brandon Shell. He's a proven veteran that started quite a few games in the league. If he's ready to go and Carroll says he has a chance to play on Sunday, if they activate him as well, I think there's a chance that he could be the one that's starting against the 49ers, who he played well against last year in week 17. So that would maybe be the other good news to go with Tyler Lockett being available, is you've got reinforcements coming at 2 positions of need right now due to injuries and COVID.
And I'm excited to see if Colby Parkinson really does play, if he can transfer that momentum he had in some parts of camp into the regular season, because I think he's just an excellent weapon. He can be, just with his size. Obviously, him and D. Eskridge offer completely different skill sets. But if losing D. Eskridge for at least for this game, but adding Colby Parkinson could add a different element to this team and to this offense that the Seahawks haven't had a ton of up to this point, just with a tall, lanky, a guy that can win those 50-50 balls, an athletic as heck tight end, in Colby Parkinson. And it's another, and going back to the tackle situation, let's not pretend like Brandon Shell is like head and shoulders above Cedric Ogbuehi or Jack Kieran at this point. I mean, there was some competition in camp with that tackle spot. So I think that, if Ogbuehi is able to go, that I don't think it's going to be a huge drop off. Obviously, you'd like to have all your horses in the stable, but at this point, it's at least a bit comforting that there's a chance of Ogbuehi can play. And also Alton Robinson, Benson Mayowa, also, I believe they're questionable game time decisions. And you got to have all your pass rushers for this game, because if there's a really great way to beat Jimmy Garoppolo and the Niners is to harass him, because that is when we've seen that Jimmy Garoppolo can get rattled and he makes bad decisions when he's rattled. And so you really need all your pass rushers in top shape.
And I thought not having Benson Mayowa last week in Minnesota was a big loss, because he has really played well early in the season. He looked great in the Colts game, and he's been playing some Sam linebacker. So he gives them some positional versatility. Alton Robinson, we've been complaining for a year plus about him not getting enough snaps, and now he's got an opportunity to maybe get those snaps, and he's dealing with a sore knee. So it sounds like both those players have a solid chance to play, but right now I really would say it's a 50-50 proposition whether they're going to be suiting up. Both of them playing maybe a little bit more unlikely, but I would expect at least one of those guys is going to be playing against the 49ers. How many snaps they get remains to be seen, but overall, not a lot of encouraging news necessarily. We'll see what happens with the 2 players that can be activated to the 53-man roster. That would certainly help offset the fact that you're not going to have Brandon Shell. You're not likely going to have Gerald Everett. And if D. Eskridge doesn't play in the game, having a playmaking tight end like Colby Parkinson would help the passing game as well. When we come back in the second quarter, we're going to look at some keys to victory for the Seahawks when they're on offense and defense, trying to get to 500 again. Right now, 1-2. They don't want to fall to 1-3 in the vaunted NFC West. They'll be looking to get back in the win column. What's it going to take to make it happen? Nick and I will be investigating with our weekly keys to victory. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seahawks fans, if you do a lot of driving like I do, then you need to know about a fantastic new app called Get Upside. When you open an account on Get Upside, you can get 25 cents per gallon back every time you fill up at the pump. Over time, that kind of saving starts to add up. Some people are making as much as $200 to $300 per month in cash back with Get Upside, which not only makes it easy to save, but also will give you multiple cash out options such as direct payment to your bank account, PayPal, Amazon gift cards, and more available at any time. And now when you open an account and use our promo code Touchdown, you can get a bonus 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents back per gallon. So don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Download the free Get Upside app, use our special promo code Touchdown when you sign up for your account, and start saving every time your car or truck needs a fill up. That's Get Upside, available in the iTunes App Store and on Google Play. And that promo code, again, is Touchdown.
Hey, listen up, FanDuel fantasy players. Your day is about to get 20% better. This is Vinny Iyer, host of Locked On Fantasy Football here on the Locked On Network, and I have an offer for you. Start playing fantasy this football season, and FanDuel will give you a 20% bonus on your first deposit. That's up to $500. That's a big-time bonus, and all you need to do to claim it is to make your first deposit on FanDuel. I love the fantasy contests they have on FanDuel. So many different ways to play, cash games, tournaments. I like to challenge myself there. Take my fantasy football knowledge to the next level. Many different types of game formats you can pick from: main slate, single game, best ball, snake draft, and you can even play private contests with your friends. And there's an awesome slate of games on hand every single week. You can get the players that you don't have in your redraft leagues into your lineup. Try to get that big-time return on investment. Every week is a new chance for you to win big at FanDuel, and that's what I love about it. Experience season-long wins without the season-long waits. Sign up today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your bonus and start playing today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Age and location restrictions apply. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires after 30 days.
Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Blue Friday edition. The Seahawks getting ready for their NFC West opener against the 49ers at Levi Stadium. These two teams absolutely despise one another, and it makes it a glorious rivalry match for the fans, and everybody's looking forward to the first matchup between these teams this year. And there's a lot at stake with there being two 3-0 teams atop the division, and neither one of them is the 49ers or Seahawks. Even though it's only week 4, it feels like this is a game where there's plenty of urgency for both these squads, especially Seattle. They don't want to fall to 1-3. So let's talk, Nick, how they can avoid that 1-3 start in the first 3-game losing streak with Russell Wilson under center. It's never happened. They haven't lost 3 games in a row since 2011. So how do they avoid that happening in Santa Clara? Let's start on the offensive side of the football. What is the first key for you for the Seahawks to escape with a road win and get back to 500?
Well, I'm going to start with a super high-level intellectual, super complicated concept. Score points. But more specifically, I'm going to go in a little more specific direction. Score points in every quarter. In 12 quarters that the Seahawks have played, I guess over time that's 13, they have gone scoreless in 5 quarters, which is absolutely concerning. And so in this game, it might seem a little trivial, but score in every quarter, even if it's just 3 points, because you cannot afford to go dormant on offense for entire quarters against a division rival that is hell-bent on taking the division crown from you. And don't let, 3 and outs happen. There's some miscommunication. There's one thing or another, a penalty, a bad route, a mistimed throw. Yep. 3 and outs happen. Don't let 1 3 and out turn into 2, turn into 3 in a row. And, don't let that snowball. I think that the Seahawks have really had a hard time getting out of a rut on offense after they get into one. And the best offenses have those 3 and outs. The best offenses in college football and the NFL, they have, spurts where they go dormant, but you got to get out of it. You got to wake up, especially with the game on the line. I'm expecting this game to be close. And it's going to be, the Seahawks are going to be on the wrong side of things if there's a goose egg on one of the quarters for scoring for the Seahawks. You gotta take advantage of every scoring opportunity you have and score in every quarter.
And I think the key to scoring in every quarter, and our Let Russ Cook supporters are going to absolutely despise me after this segment, but you gotta run the football. You look at the way last week went. I think one of the reasons the Seahawks, and you look at the Titans game, the first half, they were running the ball. They didn't have a great yards per carry average, but they had 2 rushing touchdowns. just the threat of Chris Carson was making it easier for Russell Wilson and the passing game. And then last week against the Vikings, Chris Carson had almost 80 rushing yards in the first half. He had a 30-yard touchdown. The offensive line was blocking really well on the ground. And even their first drive in the third quarter, they picked up a first down with back-to-back carries by Carson and Alex Collins. They were running the ball effectively, and then they got cute with a couple screens that didn't work. And then next thing you know, they're down 10, which felt like a 30-point deficit in this game with the way the Seahawks defense was playing and the way the Vikings were humming on offense. And they just got away from it. Chris Carson hardly touched the ball the rest of the game. You can't keep falling into that rut. You see what these other teams are doing to you. They're chewing up a lot of clock in the second half, and they're doing it in part because they have effective ground games that they are sticking with. You have got to let number 32 and number 41 run the football. Get that balanced offensive approach going, and then you're not going to be so reliant on explosive plays, which is what the Seahawks have been going from the first half to the second half. Really, their games have been like the 2020 season, just in game format this year. They've been red hot the first two quarters. Then the last two quarters, less than 5 points per game in the third and fourth quarter so far this year, which is dead last in the NFL. That is unacceptable with the talent they have on that side of the football, particularly with Wilson at quarterback. But you got to have the run game going. And this is the 49ers team giving up 4.7 yards per carry. So there's no excuse. You got to be able to establish that running game, get the play fakes going off of it. That's when you can take those shots against a cornerback group that I think is susceptible, but you got to set it up with your run game.
Yeah, the Seahawks aren't the Jets. You know, they have a talented offense that knows how to score points. It's just a matter of doing that consistently and finding a game plan that works and keeping it going. And you mentioned with how the Seahawks defense is played, it's going to be vital to score points at any opportunity. And with the rushing game, I mean, yeah, the 49ers are 23rd in the NFL in rush defense. So absolutely, this should be a game that Chris Carson and company should be able to eat. And another point as well is get the running backs not only involved in the run game, but in the passing game. This is a game that the 49ers have allowed, receptions. And I know you've got the numbers, Corbin, but they've allowed several passing numbers to the running backs.
Third most receiving or third most receptions. I believe there's 7 for receiving yards to running backs. They have been very ineffective at stopping them in all capacities, not just running the ball, but catching the ball as well.
Yeah, and then Seahawks defensive side, that's also been a problem. And, you see guys kind of leak out of the backfield, and all of a sudden a 3-yard pass to a running back turns into a 3rd and 8 conversion or, a 2nd and 11 conversion, and it's maddening. And the Seahawks can flip the script real big on the 49ers if they can effectively involve their running backs in the pass game.
Yeah, the 49ers, and you know that they're going to be trying to get – and Bobby Wagner mentioned this. I think this is key talking about it. We're mentioning things the Seahawks have struggled with. On offense, it's been putting points on the board in the second half. On defense, it's kind of one of those where do I start type ordeals. But when I look at the 49ers, this is not a team that scares you with their ability to win downfield in the passing game. That is not what Jimmy Garoppolo is known for. The receivers they have, Brandon Ayuk can win over the top. Deebo Samuel occasionally can, but that's not really the biggest strength of their passing game. It's that short, quick, get the football out passing game, create after the catch, and the screen game. That's what Bobby Wagner is highlighting. They'll run screens to tight ends, to receivers, running backs, to their fullback Kyle Juszczyk. And he even joked about this, and I don't know if it's necessarily a joke. Trey Lance, they might run a screen too. I mean, they will find all kinds of different ways to run screens, and Kyle Shanahan is a master at it. And so really, stopping screens is going to be key. But I think the big thing that I want to mention here, no more coverage lapses, no more assignment lapses. They've had those on screen plays. They've had them when they've been in man coverage. They've had them when they've been in zone coverage. You need to execute. I know that seems very elementary, but that is what is killing this defense right now. They are not executing their assignments. So whether it's screens or they're going against those short, quick passes or even the downfield ones, do your job. All 11 players on the field need to do their job. That is critical against any team, but especially one like San Francisco that has a coordinator, a head coach that's a coordinator that I respect the hell out of in Kyle Shanahan that will exploit the mistakes that you make schematically.
Yeah, you think the other guys are wide open for the Vikings and the Titans, and wait till you have literally probably the best offensive mind in football in Kyle Shanahan exploiting that. He's probably sleeping all week like it's a few days before Christmas, looking at some of the gifts that Seahawks defenses have been giving offenses this season so far. And to steal from another fanhood of mine, Kalani Sitake, head coach at BYU, is a great defensive mind, and he preaches do 1/11th of the job on defense. Do your 1/11th. Don't do the other guy's 1/11th. Don't do 3/11ths. Do your 1/11th of the job. And I think that's an excellent mentality. And I'm hoping they do that against Utah State tonight. We'll see. But I just think that's a great mindset. And I think the Seahawks need to remember that. I think that it's especially when they're so proud and they're elite athletes and they're getting paid a lot of money. And, there was a lot of finger pointing last week, or at least, looked that way. I think I hope they had a good week of practice and kind of soul searching a little bit and get back to the do your job, do 1/11th of the job, which is yours, and everyone, and just trust the guys around you to do the same exact thing. And another one is, win those early downs, limit those yards per catch on first down. Don't let the Niners turn 1st and 10 into 2nd and 3. Don't let 2nd and 8 turn into 3rd and 1. You got to pin him back because, like you mentioned, I do not have a high opinion of Jimmy Garoppolo. He is 15th in passer rating and 14th in QBR. That is exactly where I think he is. I think he's perfectly average. He's a fine quarterback. He's not great. He's not terrible. He's perfectly, 15th in the league. I think that's right about where I would hold him. So he's a guy that can take advantage of mistakes if you give it to him. But if you pin him back, if you put pressure on him and you make them beat you with just Jimmy Garoppolo, that is where you can beat the 49ers. I mean, we saw that in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Once it became part of Jimmy Garoppolo, once it became the Jimmy Garoppolo show, it didn't work out so well for the Niners in that Super Bowl. And I think that's just who he is. And so limiting those early, easy, second and manageable, third and short situations, pinning them back instead could be huge because that is where you get those mistakes that Jimmy Garoppolo tends to make.
Yeah, and how do you get to that point where you are holding them down on 1st and 2nd down? I think there's two things that go hand in hand together because they involve physicality and tackling. One thing, you cannot let the 49ers win off tackle, off the edge with their run game. If they start doing that, you're going to be able to run play action off of it. They can sprinkle in their screens easier. It just makes life easy for Kyle Shanahan. And so their edge guys have got to be able to contain, set anchor, hold up at the point of attack, and they got to be able to tackle when those runs are going off tackle, whether it's outside zone or power. They have to be able to do that. And then the other way to put the 49ers into rough third down situations, limit the yak. If a guy like Deebo Samuel catches the ball on a quick screen, you got to get him to the ground, and that's easier said than done. He's one of my favorite receivers to watch, just the way he plays the game and how physical he is. The Seahawks have to bring their hard hat, get him down, get Brandon Ayuk down, get Mohamed Sanu down, get Kyle Juszczyk down. Don't let them rack up a bunch of yards after the catch. If you can do that and you can set the edge against the run game, it really hinders what the 49ers can do on offense. When you really start to put things on Jimmy Garoppolo's plate, you've got to win passing downfield now. That makes this offense far easier to defend. So to me, those are the two big keys to slowing down this 49ers offense. If the Seahawks can check both those off, I like their chances of going to 1-0 in NFC West play. If they don't, I really don't like their chances. And I think they're 1-3 coming back home to play the Rams.
Yeah, and the 49ers are 5th in the league, I believe, in sacks allowed, 5th best. And so they do have a pretty solid offensive line, and part of that is scheming. I think they get the ball out quick. They move the pocket, and that is part of by design. But you look at the offensive numbers up and down the board, ranking-wise for the Niners. They are very average for the most part if you get him in pressure. But as soon as Kyle Shanahan, as soon as you let him get into a rhythm, as soon as you expose your weaknesses from the week before and don't fix that's going to be an issue. Those little windows are going to be wide open for a guy like Shanahan in that offense. And, Garoppolo, I think, is very competent in operating that offense. And if those holes are still there that there were the last few weeks for the Seahawks defense, this is a team, maybe one of the best equipped teams in the NFL to take advantage of that.
And as our buddy Matty Brown loves to say, Kyle Shanahan will find the fish or the two fish that are on your defense that can be exploited. And so you've got to do your job. Everybody's got to play their assignments. And like I mentioned, the tackling, setting the edge, those things are crucial to slowing down a Kyle Shanahan operated offense. So we'll see what the Seahawks do. They're going to have to play much better than they did last week, or this could be another long afternoon on the road. When we come back in the third quarter, Nick and I are going to dish out our weekly picks to click, both on offense and defense. And I'm going to give you the floor, as always, for your Blue Friday prediction. I already made mine on our crossover show. We're going to see who Nick believes is going to win this game at Levi Stadium. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Did you know that Built Bar has so many delicious flavors? There is something for everyone. If you talk to a Built Bar fanatic like myself, we're definitely passionate about our favorite flavors, whether it's raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate. My personal favorite, peanut butter brownie. I'll eat an entire box in one sitting, and I'm not afraid to admit it. If you haven't tried all the flavors, you can get a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. And not only are Built Bars the best tasting, they really taste like candy bars, but they're also healthy too. 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, only 4 to 5 grams net carbs. We're talking amazing tasting flavors, and they're healthy. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com.
David Harrison here, the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast, celebrating with you a 21 grain salute to a less boring sandwich thanks to Dave's Killer Bread. I don't know about you guys, but when I eat pizza, I eat it for the toppings, not the crust. And when I eat a sandwich, it's for what's inside the bread, not for the bread. But when I throw a sandwich on 21 whole grains and seeds, thin sliced bread from Dave's Killer Bread, it is the epitome of addition by subtraction. That thin sliced bread lets me focus on what's inside the sandwich, but also adds to the sandwich with killer taste, killer texture, killer nutrition, a subtle sweetness, and a seed-coated crust. Dave's Killer Bread is America's #1 organic bread for a reason. It tastes so stinking good. Dave's Killer Bread is made with the highest quality organic and non-GMO ingredients and is power-packed with whole grains, fiber, and protein. Visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store.
Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Blue Friday edition. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. As always on our Blue Friday show, glad to be joined by Nick Lee. We just dished out our keys to victory. Now we're going to take more of an individual scope, the picks to click. Which players we think are going to have big games for the Seahawks on Sunday against the 49ers. Going to give you the floor here on offense, Nick. Who do you think is the Seahawks offensive pick to click heading into this Week 4 matchup?
Well, we can't present all these game plans for the offense about establishing the run and establishing rhythm on the ground and not pick Chris Carson, because Chris Carson is a top 10 running back in this league when he's healthy. And that's my pick this time. I think they're on paper, there should be some places where Chris Carson can absolutely run. You know, they allowed over 150 rushing yards to the lowly Eagles. The lowly Eagles carved him up pretty good, and they did win that game. But at least on that side of things, the Niners struggled, and that included Jalen Hurts with his legs, the quarterback for the Eagles. So might be some opportunities for Russell Wilson as well. But in order to stay on rhythm, the Seahawks have to involve Chris Carson early and often, avoid those 3 and outs, all those stalls like we mentioned. And Chris Carson averaged 6.7 yards a carry last week. I mean, he is still pretty much on top of his game. The Seahawks just need to give him an opportunity to really take over a game, which I don't think he's done so much to this point. Not at his fault, but I think this is a game where the 49ers are going to be wary of, the Russell Wilson factor, #1 in the league in passer rating, but their run defense, it leaves something to be desired. And I think this could be Chris Carson's best game of 2021 so far.
And I'm going to surprise you with this one, because I'm going to stick with running backs, but I'm actually not going to go with Chris Carson. And I'm not saying Carson's not going to have a big game, because I think he can have a big game. But I talked about getting that run game going. I think the Seahawks, to win this game, I think that you need to be looking at getting 30 carries in this game. And I don't think Chris Carson's going to get all of those, especially with it still being early in the season. And every time Alex Collins has had the football in his hands these first 3 weeks, it hasn't been many times, but every time he's had his hands on the ball, he's made something happen. Last week, he bounced a run that looked like he was going to go for nothing, and he managed to get 6 yards and a first down. And then the game against the Titans, basically the parting of the seas on a draw, got 25 yards, and just the explosiveness that we're seeing from him now, the ability to make people miss, things that he did not do in his first stint in Seattle. This is a guy that was almost a 1,000-yard rusher for the Ravens a few years back. He is a talented back. Rashad Penny hasn't been able to get healthy. Let Alex Collins be your number 2 guy. And he had a really good game against the 49ers in week 17 last year. Only got a handful of carries, but he willed them to that victory late with his punishing running down in the red zone. I think this is a favorable matchup for not just Chris Carson, but Alex Collins. In fact, I think Alex Collins rushes for 60 yards, and I think he gets his first touchdown of the season for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, he had 5.8 yards per carry in that game against the Niners last year. He seems to like playing against the red and gold over there. I like that pick. So 2 running backs. I like that a lot. That's
very
saying
weird
something.
For us. Even for us, that was a weird
Yeah.
dynamic. But this feels like a game that they could both be factors.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't go back in time. This is not 1975. The 2 running backs can still have good games in 2021. And Corbin on defense. This is another obvious one, I think, for me. And it's almost out of necessity. It's almost out of this needs to be a game where he comes out in order for the Seahawks to win. I'm calling my shot. Jamal Adams. He's been bottled up a lot this year. And I'm not sure how much longer you can keep a caged animal locked up like that. Mostly, again, I'm calling this because we're going to need him to break out. This is a game that the Seahawks absolutely need him to harass Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that he gets his first sack this year against Jimmy G. And not just a sack, but, maybe a 3rd and 6 turns into a 4th and 13, thanks to Jamal Adams. I don't think there isn't a better guy that shoots off the line of scrimmage coming down from the box in the entire NFL than Jamal Adams. And I think the Seahawks really aren't wasting it, but they're yet to find that niche this year. Last year it worked a lot, but this year I think that they're yet to find that rhythm with him. This is a game that I think they need to find that rhythm. And I think Jamal Adams, because of that, maybe they're game planning it for it this week. He gets a sack, does a couple other things, a couple other QB hits or pressures, a few more tackles, and I think he's a big factor in this game.
I'm going to go way outside the box for my pick on this one. And knowing my luck, the Seahawks will deactivate him and they'll play LJ Collier this week. But I don't see that happening based on what Ken Norton Jr. said earlier this week. But I'm going with Robert Kimdiche, and here's why. The last 2 games, his first 2 games he's played in since 2019, he had a quarterback hit that unfortunately got called for roughing the passer, and he was too late on it, but it was a good pass rushing move against the Titans. And then he had a pressure on a bootleg last week against the Vikings, the only 3 and out that they had on the Vikings the entire game. That was on 2nd down, and he was immediately in Kirk Cousins' face. Got a real light little push on him at the end, wasn't flagged for it. I've seen flashes of pass rushing capability from him. He had a couple decent bull rushes against Minnesota, but Kirk Cousins was getting the ball out so quick he wasn't able to do much. I think in this game, interior pressure is going to be key because I don't know that against Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey, the edge guys are going to be able to consistently get to Jimmy Garoppolo, especially with the type of offense the 49ers have when they try to get the ball out quick. If you really want to harass Garoppolo, blitzing is a way to do it, but I also think the interior guys quickly collapsing the pocket can lead to some success in terms of creating pressure and flustering Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think Robert Kimdiche is going to get a strip sack at this game. I'm going to go bold. I think that number 92 has his first big play for the Seahawks. He's gotten close to getting sacks in each of his first 2 games. I think he makes it happen in Santa Clara. I always want to say in San Francisco. Technically, they're not playing there, but I think he gets that first sack, and I think he creates a turnover off of it in this football game. Will they recover it? We'll have to wait and see. But I think Kimdiche is going to have a big game. So kind of go out left field a little bit, but I think that number 92 is ready for a big afternoon.
Man, we were both drinking that Kimdiche Kool-Aid before the season started, and it kind of tapered off. And then I kind
of put it in the pantry for a while, but now I got it back out. I hung on to it.
Hasn't expired yet. Yeah, there's some to be had there. I mean, he played 59% of the defensive snaps last week, so he's getting his opportunities. And there's a whole getting your sea legs kind of thing. It's been a while for him, and this is perhaps a game where he finally finds that. And you make a great point. I think there's a hard shell outer membrane of the defense or the offensive line for the Niners on the tackles. I think that's a great point. But there's a soft underbelly in that interior. And that might be where the pressure has to come from on blitz and from the defensive line. I think that's a great point. But Kamdiche, another one that maybe the Seahawks need him to break out in order to win this game.
Let's talk predictions real quick. I made my score prediction on our Crossover Thursday special, and I've already gotten some nasty messages on social media from Seahawk fans. So we'll see if they're going to be taking their pitchforks and torches and heading towards you on social media, or whether they're just going to keep coming after me.
Yeah, let's come on down to Olympia, those with the pitchforks, because it's coming for me too. Or on Twitter at NickLee51, bring it, because I'm officially starting a bit. And if you know media, a bit is you do something silly that doesn't really have a rhyme or reason or rationality. You just do it because you think in a weird way it'll work. And I'm looking for the reverse juju. I'm picking the Seahawks to lose every single week until I think that they've turned a corner. And so that's going to hold true this time. So it's not that I think that they're a 1-16 team. I just think that's just my bit. That's my reverse juju I'm trying to put on the team here to get them back on the right track. So as far as that goes, the Seahawks offense has disappeared at inopportune times, and the defense has really yet to appear mostly. And they absolutely have the talent to turn it around. I fully believe, we did kind of the same song and dance last year with the defense, and they did turn it around. I know it's a bit of a different situation. I think that I still think the Seahawks are a top 5 talented team in the NFC. I really do. I still think this is absolutely a playoff caliber team. They just need to play like it. And like I mentioned, it's about doing 1/11th of your job. And the problem is
they haven't been doing that.
They have not, and they're playing probably the best offensive coach in football right now. So that doesn't really bode well. And for that reason, I think it's a close game. It usually is with these two. It's going to be a battle. But the Seahawks are losing their grip a bit on the NFC West in a hurry. And it's not because they're a bad team. This division is like, the SEC West. It's like the NL West in baseball. I mean, it's just so stacked that it's going to be hard. If you slip a couple times, it's going to be hard to recover. And I just think they're in a tough division. Shanahan is going to game plan for that Swiss cheese of a defense the Seahawks have right now. I'm hoping they fix that. But I'm going to go ahead and say it's a close game. It's tough. It's a battle. The Seahawks are 3-1 in Santa Clara against Kyle Shanahan. So that is a little something. But I'm going to go 30-27 49ers win in a close one where the Seahawks show some promise but still can't get over the hump on the road in a tough interdivisional environment. But it's going to be a tough one, close, but they lose.
Whew, so now the 12s are going to be coming after you. So,
okay.
By the way, if you want to follow Nick, it's at NickLee51. You can
my address is now
Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. So you can kind of dish out your complaints to both of us, since we both picked the road team to lose in this case, and the 49ers
I hope I'm wrong.
To move to 3-1 in the season. Not necessarily what you want when one of the teams is going to be 4-0 and the other one's going to be 3-1 with the Rams and Cardinals playing. The Seahawks would be way behind the 8 ball, but that's what Nick and I have both picked. So feel free to air your grievances on social media. We will understand, and maybe the Seahawks will prove us wrong. Neither one of us is going to be upset if that ends up being the case on Sunday. Betting on the NFL doesn't have to be a guessing game if you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get your daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure to check out Locked On Seahawks on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and the all-new Odyssey app. That's AUDACY. When we return on Monday, hopefully Rob Rang and I will be breaking down a victory. It feels like it's been a lifetime ago since we got to break down a Seahawks win. Hopefully we'll get to do that on Monday. If not, it'll be our third straight Misery Monday, which we've never had to do in the history of Locked On Seahawks. So we will be pulling for the Seahawks to get that W on the road and improve to 2-2. We'll have our analysis regardless of the final outcome of the game. Enjoy the game. Enjoy your weekend. Go Hawks.